they got lights on them. The lights are very subtle. So you've got the Tesla wording is lit up, and over there you've got the whole thing lit up. You've got a nice big screen on it. So it's more appealing, that one, than the Tesla.
Well, one's white and bright, the other's red and menacing, I would say. So
okay, so there is a difference in visual appearance. Yeah, okay. The other really noticeable difference here is the road markings. There you've got a bit of Tesla, white lines, bit of tarmac over there, nicely sign written. And we saw this up in the Lake District when they were actually filming we filmed them actually painting the grid.
Well, I think it's not just that. If you have a look, that accessible parking spot, we've seen that at some other Tesla locations, but actually, given that this is one of the older design Tesla locations, Gridserve is really the only one offering accessible EV charging at this location.
Although it's not designated a disabled bay or accessible bay.
No.
It is just a wider bay and bright green instead of dark green, implying it's something different. So I think it implies you can use it if it's free, but if there is anyone disabled or less able, they should use that one.
And I think it'd probably be an interesting thing to understand from our audience, which is that do we see those with accessibility needs coming across these bays where they're blocked, or is it a case that these are usually kept free? We don't know how respectful other drivers are of users with accessibility
needs. Well, something we
needs.
can check out with Tesla at Walton Summit, because Walton Summit is the first Tesla supercharger I've ever seen which has a dedicated disabled bay.
Have you ever seen anybody use it on any of the times?
No, we need to stop. In fact, if we stop on the way back today, let's check that one out now that we've highlighted it.
That's probably a good point.
That's on the way home.
Because I think Tesla, they designate it as like a family and a accessibility
It's a family one as well, yeah. Let's check that out on the way home. Right, so I think a bit more appealing. They have a cabinet per charger rather than a batch of them. So each of the Tesla chargers does 4. Tesla cabinets does 4 chargers. Here it's 1 cabinet per charger.
I think the Tesla ones look a bit more industrial with their design. I think the Gridserve, I think they put a little bit of consideration into what those cabinets behind the chargers look like.
But do you remember when we were at it was Sandbach Services, and we saw the Gridserve engineers actually installing them, and the chief engineer we talked to said that they're trying to get rid of an individual cabinet behind each one and build them into chargers. And they do that on the 360 now, the dual bay ones.
Yeah, those are the much wider one with like wings at the top.
That's the one, yeah. The other thing I really like is we see different cars. So we got a VW, we've got a Mercedes, and we've got, it looks like a Vauxhall.
Yeah, I think Tesla's, there's only a limited number of models.
And it's either an S, an X, a Y, or a 3, and you get bored with them after a while.
I think the only way Tesla could spice it up is if they ever got the Cybertruck into the UK, which does not look likely at the moment.
Or the Roadster.
The Roadster.
That would be a good one.
Have you ever seen a Roadster in person?
Yeah, there's one at, in fact, there's one at, where we're going next. We got one at the
service centre. Sure.
They've got the original Roadster in the showroom today. It was the Cybertruck we went last time. They've got a Roadster in there now.
Right, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So look out, there's a car coming. I don't think there's an awful lot else to say. One of the things I do like, and we're going to have a look at one, is the screen. Because when we're filming, we can actually go to the screen and we can see how fast they're charging, how long they've been there, and how long they've got left. In fact, if we do that now, I find it really interesting. With a Tesla, there's no screen. And even on the V4 chargers, which now have a screen, all the screen says is, look at your app. It doesn't tell you anything when you plug a Tesla in.
I think the service ones are very much more sort of utilitarian, which is, as we saw, that people come out, they get out their car, plug in within 3 seconds and they're gone. They don't need to look at a screen. They don't need to mess around in contactless.
Yeah. That one actually took me aback. I was there just closing the boot, and a car literally pulled in. He was out, and it is raining. He was out, round the front, pressed the button, flap open, plugged it in, and he was off. And it was literally 3 seconds, and his car was locked and charging, and he was on his way to the motorway services. And that is something that even petrol car drivers, you can't even get the nozzle out the petrol pump in that sort of time.
I don't know, I'm sure there's probably some footage of some crazy people speed running petrol filling.
Let's go and have a look at a little bit of charging speed. Okay, so what we've got, it's charging, it's net zero energy, which is lovely to see. It's 41% state of charge. It's charging at 15 kilowatts.
That seems a bit low.
It's taken 3.867 kilowatt hours, been charging for 6 minutes, but it's charging at 42 kilowatts. It's a EQA.
That seems a bit low, doesn't it?
It's very low. Let's have a look at this is an ID7. Right, this is running at 71 kilowatts, but it's 78% state of charge.
So it was potentially higher to start with, that one.
Potentially. It's been here 24 minutes. Let's have a look at the little Corsa, is it? Yeah, it is. These, I think, max out at about 100 anyhow. Ah, interesting. 43 kilowatts again.
So a couple at the same low, relatively low rate. In fact, 43. Is that a bit coincidental that it's both the same?
That's a good question. I would like to say no, but
you'd think the site would have plenty of power going to it.
We've got that's an EQC, is it? Yeah. I wouldn't like to say. We found this out at Chester East Services, didn't we? Where nobody was getting the full power that they were capable of, and we actually found the Gridserve and the ABB engineers on site at the time.
Yeah, I think that was when it just opened up and they were having a few technical issues. I imagine it's probably solved, but at the same time, it's been a while since we've been back there.
Yeah, I think there's a bit more space. We can wander up and down. There's not space behind the Teslas.
Trouble is, the pavement doesn't really go anywhere, so it is nice that you can kind of get off the car park, but it just ends in a fence and messy grass.
Yeah. Let's have a look and see if we can get the plates on these, usually low down. Yeah, I'll let you get down there.
Oh, I'm not sure even I can get down that low. Let's see what we can do. Yep.
Right, I'm going to get down on this one. Oh, what have we got here? So here we've got maximum 1.5 kilowatts, maximum's 500, output 150 at 920 volts. Yeah, it's one of those that, although these technically are 350 capable, looks like the cabinets are restricting them. And certainly when you're pulling the 800 volt architecture ones, which go up to 900 volts, they're throttling back anyhow to about 150 kilowatts.
Just a quick question. So would Gridserve have a separate power allocation going into it from Tesla, or would they have to share the overall site, so Tesla and Gridserve would be tied into the same limit?
No. There's two substations over there, and they will run totally separate power. They won't share power in any way, I would have thought, although the power going into those two substations would almost certainly be a common power done by the DNO.
So it really comes down to whether there's enough actual capacity coming into the site.
Yeah, well, you've got to think these locations, the motorway services, date way back into the 60s and 70s. And back then, the idea of charging a car on a motorway services was just stupid. The idea of internet cafes and everything like that, where people had a huge demand on power, it just didn't happen. People came to here, there was a cafe, there was a shop, and that was about it. So on its own, the demand for electricity just as a service station has increased quite dramatically in the last 50 years. If you then add in the EVs, you can't possibly cope. So the EVs would have their own separate supply coming in on all of these motorway services without doubt. It would just be an independent one. But each one would need its own. Now the DNO might decide to bring in one big thick cable and split it into two substations, one for Gridserve, one for Tesla. But that would be then the two totally separate supplies.
One of the things that is interesting to me. A lot of the Gridserve installations that we see, they're often going in multiples of 6, but we often see 12 or more at a new install. This is only 6. Now, I don't know when Tesla would have had the access or whether they were competing at the same time, but it's not as many as we've seen in some other Gridserve locations.
Even Lancaster was 12, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so this seems this seems to be a low number. And I agree with you on that one, that nowadays, particularly with the targets, 2024 was the first year where they brought the targets in for percentage of EVs, 22%. And I don't know if you noticed, but there's a big article on news today that the news media has been lying about the actual numbers. EVs are growing quite healthily, but the media has been downplaying it, downright lying it, in fact, about it.
I think some of it plays into sort of people's expectations, which is a lot of people want to see EVs fail. A lot of people have a perception that they can't be as popular as they actually are. Yeah. So if they see an article validating what they already think, then it's just basically making them feel good.
It is. But in actual fact, EVs are growing quite healthily, and they are outstripping ICE cars in many ways, particularly now with all the discounting going on, that EVs are now pretty much in price parity with their ICE competitors. So the number is growing, and with the number growing, I'm of the opinion that 6 chargers here is not going to be adequate for the future demand. Tesla seems to know this. I know they outsell most of the others, but if you imagine Gridserve, for example, have to serve all of the other brands put together, whereas Tesla only service their own brand.
I suppose there's always the element of cost, which is that for EV charging networks, if they have to spend massive amounts for future-proofing for 2 or 3 years down the line, that can actually be a sort of a very costly exercise. We've already seen this is a classic example, Gridserve, you've got at the back behind you those original electric highway ones. Yeah. They obviously were a starting point, but now we've moved on to these. But where would they put more if it was this particular site? Where would you...
It's where you're standing.
Yeah, probably.
They could have built a square here with chargers all the way round it. This seems to me pretty redundant, a little redundant hill. They could have gone back to here. They also have some chargers over there. You just see them in the background. They are the old electric highway, 50 kilowatts, and they could have put maybe a row of 6 in there as well. What I personally would like to see, and we've done a video on this recently, if we can, we'll need to do a link down below for it. I would like to see not only chargers going in, but battery packs. And we would, you weren't with me at the time, I was down in Bodmin in Cornwall, and they have down there, the very first of those, it's got a battery pack, it's got a canopy with solar panels, and it's got, from memory, I think it's 6 of these 350 chargers, and they run it effectively off-grid. There is a grid, but the panels during the day on most days will be quite happy providing the power for the chargers. There's big signs up saying this is experimental, so they are looking at this. The problem down there is they're doing that because they're being forced to. They cannot get sufficient power from the DNO to run what they want. And there's a lot of other reasons why putting in 350 kilowatt chargers when you haven't got enough power makes sense. And we cover that in a separate video. But I would like to see a lot more innovation going in. Let's put in a big battery pack, grid connected battery pack, so that these chargers can buy and sell electricity to and from the grid when they're not being used. We've got 6 chargers, 1 car. These could be actually supplementing and helping the grid. If at peak time these are not being used by cars, these could become peaker plants for the grid, and the grid connected battery packs could be supplementing the grid, and overnight they could be charging up on really cheap overnight electricity. Bit more thought needs to go into that side of it rather than just plonking in chargers.
I suppose the other consideration is that if you put in too many chargers, obviously that increases the cost in the short term for them, but technology moves on. I know I've seen some of the news about megawatts charging and a slightly different cable specification. So if you end up with too many installed too quickly, you run the risk of them being out of date, kind of like these Tesla V3 chargers when everyone else is installing the V4s.
It's true, and that's why when Tesla announced the V4 chargers, they classified them as future-proof. And in answer to that specific question, the Tesla plug that you use is actually capable of 1 megawatt charging. The plug that's on for using on a car is 1 megawatt capable. The cable is 1 megawatt capable as well. And if you look on the plates on the V3 chargers, they are 500 kilowatt capable. So Tesla does seem to build in an awful lot of redundancy that none of the V4s, the new ones when they come out, are going to be running at 1 megawatt. We hope they will. So they seem to be building in a redundancy, and that redundancy could be several years. Also, you've got to realize that some of the Tesla original superchargers are just being replaced. We saw this recently in, my memory's gone now, but there was one, it was in, if I'm not mistaken, Flint Mountain, where they've taken out some of the old chargers and put in some of the V4s. They did it also at Launceston in Cornwall.
What was the situation at T-Bay? Because they used to have some Tesla chargers and then they all got wrapped up and then they got moved.
They were the V2 chargers and they replaced them with V3 chargers. And I'll cover this one very briefly. It's a very interesting story. If you have V2 chargers, these have 150 kilowatts provided to 2 chargers. They share power. So when that site is busy and there were 6 chargers, they were all 8 chargers, they were all full. It meant each car was only getting 75 kilowatts. So there were big queues built up, and these were the massive bank holiday queues, because people were just getting 75 kilowatts. They were spending hours, not hours, but a long time on the chargers. What they did was they took those 8 out and they put in 12 V3 chargers, which each have 250 kilowatts dedicated supply. And at first glance, that is absolutely stupid. If you can't supply 8 at 150 kilowatts, why on earth put in 12 at 250? But the answer is, if you have a car pulls in and it's empty and it's capable of charging at 250 kilowatts and the charger is relatively empty, that car can charge in about 30 minutes from 20% up to 80% and be gone. And another one can pull along. And as the charging curve drops, there's more power available for the other chargers. And literally going from 8 chargers at 150 kilowatts shared power up to 12 at 250 just absolutely eliminated all the queues.
So what you're saying is that it's not really the site limit that's coming into it, it's more about how it's allocated to the vehicles.
Absolutely right. And that is something that a lot of people are now starting to understand, that you can put in massive overpowered chargers, and for the cars that use it, they're in and out really quick, and that frees up the chargers to charge more cars in a day, and that's more throughput in a day.
So it's not necessarily, I mean, when you explain it like that, it makes sense, but at first glance, it sounds a bit unusual.
Yeah. And yet we see, we saw this in fact, last night, Instavolt, they're still fitting 100 kilowatt chargers.
Wow, yes.
And you're thinking, what is the game? And we're here now, we've got, hi there. This looks like, check out our website, EV Leasing. It's amazing, if you loiter around chargers long enough, you don't get arrested, you get to meet interesting people. We just met up with one of the Gridserve engineers. He's out there looking after the chargers and making sure everything's working. And we were absolutely right in our estimation. These are not 350 kilowatts. The charger units inside, these are all 175 kilowatts here. So that's the maximum anyone's going to get out of these here. We were commenting on, or he was commenting on the problems they're having over the other side, that they're still waiting for power over the other side. Tesla got power over there before them. Gridserve got power here before the Teslas.
It's a bit of the opposites, isn't it?
Weird.
Just crazy.
Weird. And we commented, but they still haven't got power, and now they're speculating that they might have to close the motorway to get power across. A weird situation, but they're really struggling to try and get power to the chargers. Tesla taken 2 years. That side also took the best part of 2 years. Gridserve still haven't got power on that side.
And this is really coming from the DNOs, are we saying?
It seems to be. I know the Tesla side over there, it wasn't purely DNOs, it was wayleaves on the land.
Right.
They didn't have legal permission to run cables across the land.
You'd think they'd start with that, wouldn't you?
Well, no, in actual fact, logically, just thinking on the spot, if you can't run your cable across a particular bit of land, you find a different route.
Yeah, but some of those routes could probably end up being quite far and quite costly.
I don't know. But yeah, you'd think you'd do basic research in the background, but you also have to think maybe some of the farmers over there who own the land suddenly think, hey, chargers, yeah, let's make a little bit of a living out of this. And yeah, whatever. I don't know, it might be maligning farmers. But anyhow, I think we're about finished here for the moment. We are wet enough. I think we're going to go in and get a little bit warm, get a coffee and possibly a donut or two.
If you keep making that joke and things, if you eat a donut for every time you make the joke, well, you might be in trouble here.
Yeah, how do you know I don't? You don't come out with me every single day.
All right, I'll leave you to that one then.
Okay, so thanks very much for watching. I hope you found this informative. We don't go out with Jonas every single day. I do a lot of filming on my own, do a lot of filming in the studio. It's absolutely great when I come out with Jonas. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to show you Jonas. But don't stop filming. So we're just going to swing the camera around so you can see what setup we've got here. So there we go.
Oh, here I am stuck in the rain out filming.
So you now get to see Jonas.
Yeah.
So he is, he directs me, he helps me, he tells me to stop and do it again because it's not good enough. So he really is a big help when I'm out there. So hopefully it makes the videos better. But we're trying to get him in front of the camera an awful lot more than he has been in the past.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that. If it involves coming out in the rain and doing this, well, I'm not sure you're going to win me over.
And getting cold as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's it. So I'm Dave.
I'm Jonas.
And thanks for watching.
Take care.